economics. So last class we covered inflation, today we covered unemployment, and I really felt it was important to convey to students the...
Good afternoon, Professor Chiang. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Let's start at the beginning. Could you share a brief overview of your academic journey and what drew you to economics?
Okay, well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me. My interest in economics started when I was very young. I was born in Elkhart, Indiana. My parents immigrated from Taiwan in the 1960s. And as a child, we lived a very frugal life. My parents were very eager to save money to send my siblings and myself to college to give us good opportunities for our future. So I learned about saving and investing at a very young age. In fact, I remember when I was just 8 years old, I purchased my first shares of stock, and I remember it was Wendy's, the fast food chain. And I bought 100 shares of that stock using money I had saved from allowances and birthday money saved over the years. And I remember my father telling me that as a shareholder, I am now an owner of the company. And so if the company does well, my money will grow very, very fast. And so that experience as a childhood really made me fascinated with economics. And so choosing to study economics was a very easy choice for me. I was always fascinated with Las Vegas, so I came here to UNLV to study economics. And from here, I discovered that it was also very enjoyable for me to teach economics to others. And so that's why I decided to go on to graduate school at the University of Florida, where I received my PhD. And now I've been teaching economics for 23 years. I am thrilled. Recently, I was offered a professor position here at UNLV to come back to Las Vegas full time. So it's truly an honor to come back to Las Vegas to teach at the school that I learned economics myself.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And within 23 years in such a dynamic field, how has the process of teaching economics changed over the years for you, especially given our rapidly changing global economics dynamics?
That's a great question. Well, first, it's not an easy subject to teach because it's a very technical subject. And when you analyze economic problems using graphs or data, it can be very confusing to students. So it's a tough class to teach. However, it can also be the most valuable class a student can take, right? Because not only are students learning important issues facing the world, but they're also learning how to make decisions that make their lives better. And so to answer your question, how has teaching evolved over my 23 years? I believe there's a less emphasis on economic theory and more emphasis on the practical applications of economics. What are the important issues facing the world, and how do we make decisions to make people's lives better? So in other words, I really believe that economics courses have become more practical, and especially in a globalized world where we have issues such as international trade, we have foreign direct investment, we have immigration. These are all very important economic topics that we as students need to understand how they impact the world and how they impact people's lives.
That actually led to our next question. So regarding the most pressing economic issues the world is currently facing right now, can you delve into that a little bit deeper?
Well, sure. Certainly from a macroeconomics perspective, you always have issues such as inflation, economic growth, unemployment. Those are always going to be important issues, economic problems that we as a society have to address. But there also are some sort of new economic issues such as automation, the effect of automation on the labor markets. We also have more recently the effect of artificial intelligence or AI and how that's changing the way we work, change the way we live, change the way we learn. So there's a lot of very interesting topics that are becoming very important in our discipline.
I see. How often, in your experience, do established economic theories align with the real world scenarios?
I would say that most economic theories do align very well with the real world. Otherwise, there would be no purpose in teaching it. For example, one of the most important economic theories is the efficiency of markets, right? You have consumers, you have firms, they interact in the market to create the goods and services that we enjoy. We all, as consumers, we enjoy having a variety of goods to choose when we go shopping, when we choose to buy a new car, when we choose to buy new technology. We like that variety. And so that depends on a strong market structure, which is a central theory of economics. But also, I would say a very strong economic theory is specialization, right? Everybody needs to specialize in something. For example, you cannot be truly successful by being good at many things. I mean, that's wonderful, but to be truly successful, you have to be very good at one thing. And that's something that economics teaches us, that by specializing in something, you become very, very good. You build a strength, and so you build what's called a comparative advantage. So that's something we teach in economics that really has some real-world implications, because truly the most successful people in the world are those that have a fantastic idea that they are able to put to the market. But also your question is, what are some things that maybe do not align with the real world? I would say from one example, in macroeconomics, we have a theory called the money multiplier, which is the theory that if banks are allowed to lend as much money as they can, that in theory, money can be endless, right? So if people are willing to save money and banks are willing to lend it out, that cycle can be multiplied many times over. But in reality, we find that many people are actually pretty cautious about their money, right? They don't always like to put all their money in the banks. They're worried about the structure of banks. And also we have banks who are very hesitant to lend money, especially after the financial crisis. In 2008, where many banks were struggling because they made loans too easily that people couldn't pay back. So for that reason, because of the stricter lending practices that have been implemented in the past 10 or 15 years, we see that the money multiplier is not as strong as the theory suggests. So there are examples like that where we teach certain theories that may not be very seen in real life, but I would say, to answer your question, most theories do have very important real life implications.
It sounds like the interplay between the theory and the reality has always been fascinating, and also worth our academia's time to look even deeper.
Exactly.
Is there any contemporary research or breakthrough in economics that you're currently excited about?
I would say that economic breakthroughs are not as exciting as like medical breakthroughs or engineering breakthroughs, right? Because when there's a discovery of a new technology or a new cure for a disease, that's very, very exciting. In economics, research in economics tends to deal with how to make policies better, right? So, for example, how to deal with healthcare or in the environment or education, for example. Economic research also deals with analyzing how people and firms can make better decisions, for example, to improve profit for a company or to better manage one's money or resources to live a better life. So in terms of exciting economic research, I would say one of the most exciting topics in the past 10 or 20 years has been in behavioral economics. So behavioral economics is sort of like the intersection between economics and psychology. It's the study of how people's behavior influences their decision making. And in fact, there's a very exciting sort of field within behavioral economics called game theory. And game theory is the study of making strategic decisions. How to make strategic decisions to win competitions, or how to deal with situations such as political elections or legal disputes or even international relations. So game theory, I would say, is kind of like a hot topic in economics these days. In fact, this is a few years ago, there was a movie, Crazy Rich Asians. It's interesting because the main star of that movie, Rachel, was an economics professor in the movie. And she actually used game theory strategies to win the approval of her future mother-in-law. So I thought it was fascinating that the game theory is one of those hot topics, and we can actually see it in pop culture in a recent movie.
That's very interesting and intriguing, actually. How does the game theory apply to like entrepreneurs, like local business owners?
Of course, game theory is all about how do you strategize against someone who may be coming up with similar ideas as you, right? How do you compete in the business world? So for the most basic example is pricing games. If you have a product and you want to price it on the market, what you price your product in the market will affect your competition, right? And what they do will affect you. So game theory studies what that optimal pricing structure might be, so that if everybody tries to lower their price, everybody loses, right? But if you price your product too high and somebody prices less than you, then you also lose. So game theory really teaches you what that optimal strategy would be, how to compete against your competitors, while at the same time, you're trying to build that industry so that overall it can be successful. So game theory has many applications in business, in politics, in world relations, and also in sports. I would say the best sports coaches are excellent game theorists, excellent behavioral economists. And so that's why I believe behavioral economics is such an important topic in economics. And the proof is in the recent Nobel Prize winners. There's been a number of Nobel Prize winners in economics who have been studying in this area, in the area of behavioral economics.
I think our audience will be more interested in learning about the behavioral economics theories in the real life situations in the future.
Yeah, essentially, classical economic theory believes that people are perfectly rational, right? You always make perfect decisions. But we know in reality that people don't make perfect decisions.
Right.
So behavioral economics explains why people might make decisions that may not make sense. So if something, if you go to a store and something is buy one, get the second one at half price, 50% off.
Right.
In our mind, we're thinking, 50% off. But in reality, we paid full price for the first one, so the discount is not truly 50% off, right?
Right.
So things like that, it really teaches firms how to come up with interesting marketing campaigns, how to play with people's sort of emotions, and how to play with their thinking in a way that could be beneficial to firms, and so there's lots of interesting applications.
I'm a completely emotional buyer. It's hard to remain rational most of the time. Now I actually learned the behavioral theory can be a great subject to understand how the consumers behave.
Exactly, yes.
Like as a marketing professional. And then the game theory will help the marketing professional to understand the market and how to try to figure out the marketing initiatives to make their company stand out.
That's a great point, because a lot of marketing strategies are trying to determine what's the best way to reach their consumer.
There's no winner in the price war.
Exactly. In game theory, we call price wars a prisoner's dilemma. And the prisoner's dilemma means that if you have two companies, they're trying to undercut each other's price to a point where nobody wins, right? They both make no money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't cut your price, the other company may still take all your customers. So it's a way to figure out, not only are you competing against your competitors, you're also cooperating with your competitors to make sure your industry survives, right? And so like the airline industry is one industry where if everyone keeps reducing their fares, there's no profit.
Yeah.
But if they find a way to not necessarily collude, but to come to an understanding that there has to be ways to generate money in the industry, then we start seeing things like, like in the last 20 years, it's very common to see fees charged for baggage, carry-on bags, seat charges, things that used to be free for everyone.
Low budget travel.
Right. So now you're seeing different strategies being used to support the industry itself.
True. And also, I believe the specialization will help the marketer figure out their niche to complement the market versus stealing from each other. That's actually applied like heavily in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Thanks, Eric, again. So on slightly different note, who would you say have been your greatest inspiration or mentors?
I would say my greatest mentors were my economics professors here at UNLV. I studied here at UNLV in 1995 and 1996. And in fact, some of my professors from back then are still professors right now, and I'm their colleagues now. So it's very special to have my mentors now. I'm working with them.
Yeah.
But they really helped me guide my path forward, to graduate school. They helped me write my first published paper. They taught me a lot of research tools, how to approach publishing, because in graduate school, research is very important. You have to write your dissertation, you have to publish it. So I felt I had the advantage because I started as an undergraduate student pursuing academic research and publishing my first paper soon after I graduated from UNLV. So that really gave me an advantage when I was eventually looking for a job as a professor, because I had already had that experience pursuing research, publishing, learning how that process works. So I owe a lot of my career, my success as an economist to my professors here at UNLV.
Could you share a little bit more about your academic journey?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Indiana. So I lived my entire childhood in a small town in Indiana. But I was always fascinated with other cities. Even though we didn't travel very much, the limited times we did travel, I truly saw wonderful places that I would love to live. So I started my college career at UCLA. I loved Los Angeles. I thought it was such a wonderful place. I may have had a little bit too much fun in LA because there's the movie industry, there's the beach, there's so many. It's also, there's just the Asian community, right? Because I grew up in a town where my entire high school, 1,200 students, there were only 3 Asian students, just myself and 2 others. So to go to, as a freshman in college at UCLA, where about 60% of my freshman class was Asian, that was eye-opening. It was almost a culture shock in a way, because I don't speak Chinese. I grew up in a small Midwestern town, and to live in such a multicultural environment, it was a very eye-opening experience. But at the same time, I also felt that UCLA may have been too big for me. So that's why I decided to transfer to UNLV. It's a smaller school, the class sizes were smaller, and that was a very good decision for me, because it was here at this school that I got the mentorship that I really needed. Professors to guide me on my path forward. I graduated from UNLV, then went on to pursue my master's and PhD in economics.
Which year it was when you graduated?
I graduated from UNLV in 1996. And so much of the city has changed since then, and that's why I've always enjoyed coming back to see how it's changed. And now that I'm living here again full time, it's just exciting to be back.
It's nearly 28 years.
Yes, exactly.
Since you graduated. I feel a sense of pride for you.
Oh, thank you.
I recall you mentioned when you were a kid, you were always fascinated about hotels and hospitality. Could you speak on that a little bit more, and how economics theories could help the industry, especially in Las Vegas?
Okay, sure. Well, as a child, again, we lived a very frugal life. So we never traveled, we never stayed in hotels. But once my older siblings started to go to college, we did travel a little bit to visit them. And whenever I stayed in a hotel, it was just a lot of fun. In fact, I loved hotels so much that, this is true, I actually turned my bedroom at home to look like a hotel. So I bought a hotel desk and a lamp, and I always made my bed. I had stationery out.
Wow.
And but what my mother was always happy because I always kept my room clean, like a hotel room. So that's really kind of opened my eyes to considering Las Vegas, because it was such a big hotels here, and I've always like that would be a great place to live. But yes, truly Las Vegas, the economy here is very dynamic, but it's also, I would say, very cyclical, right? The hospitality industry, which also depends on the convention business, really depends on the state of the economy. And especially in the last couple of years, where a lot of companies have cut back on business travel, for example. So conventions weren't as commonly attended as they used to. So we're starting to see that change. So as the economy improves, as business confidence improves, companies are again investing in their workers, right? They're sending their workers to conventions. The big conventions like CES here, they're back to where they were pre-pandemic. So I see a lot of exciting things for Las Vegas, especially with the new hotels coming up. Many jobs will be created from these hotels. Provides for a potential good future for the city.
Another follow-up question real quick is CSR, the corporate social responsibility, a part of the academic study in your field?
It is. It's again, this sort of relates back to the behavioral economics, right? Because if we go strictly with the theory and a company wants to maximize their profits, their return to the investors, right? Engaging in a lot of social responsibility projects, taking care of the environment, taking care of its people, like providing good healthcare, good benefits, might seem to contradict their mission, right, to maximize profits. But we're definitely seeing that change in the culture of companies, right? So now companies want to maintain a good image because of, especially with social media, because of the, bad press can affect a company very, very quickly. And so, for example, I lived in Florida for many years, and one example, because we have many natural disasters with hurricanes, so we see that many grocery store chains, they stock warehouses full of emergency supplies, so that when a hurricane does come, they're able to provide additional supply to their stores very, very quickly. So that's not, that's costs money to do. It costs money to obtain extra inventory, to keep the inventory.
Right.
But that's part of their corporate social responsibility, right? They want to give back, make sure that they have a strong image of giving back to the community. So I think in terms of economics, corporate social responsibility is a part of economics now because it's part of the overall value of the company.
What advice would you give to the students who are eager to pursue their education in economics?
That's a great question. I would say my biggest piece of advice to a student wanting to study economics is to always consider the other perspective of every issue. Because in economics, we need to be able to argue any perspective of every issue. So even if you believe one way, in order to make an effective argument, you have to understand the other side and what they're thinking. So it's always important to sort of carefully consider both sides and then formulate your analysis and then your arguments to be an effective debater on those issues. So I would also say that to students that economics is perhaps the most broad business discipline that you can study. Right, so with an economics degree, you can work for any major corporation, as an analyst, as a forecaster. You can work for the government, like the major organizations, the labor department, the Census Bureau. You can work in the legal profession on Wall Street, or myself, I went into academia. So with an economics degree, it's a fantastic foundation to pursue an MBA, to go to law school, to get a PhD. There's just so many opportunities there. But even if, I would say for students who might not choose to study economics as their career, it's so important that everybody study economics because of what economics does. It teaches people how to make better decisions, which will improve your life, right? It help you make better decisions, eventually make a better life for you and your family.
That was a very good conversation, Eric.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunities.